Hello, comrades. You welcome to another Diff Brief episode. Today we have a slightly unusual format online. Joining us as a guest from another city is Yura, known in the IL2 community as Zeus.
Hello.
Yes, Zeus, Yura, we've been working with you for a very long time. We started, Yura, I think we even did something together in Rise of Light, if I recall correctly.
The person who later taught me worked on Rise of Flight. It was Vova, known as Diffies. Right, and we started in 2013 when Battle of Stalingrad was being made. On the forum, there were debates about whether the Focke-Wulf 190 and accordingly the La-5 met in 1942 during the winter, not over Stalingrad, but over Velikiye Luki, and there was no such map. And I think even you, yes, wrote on the forum that we wouldn't mind if someone from the community made such a map. It doesn't take much brains. You need to know Photoshop, Illustrator, all that stuff. I knew all this because I worked in printing. And it was precisely then, in the summer of 2013, that I started to delve into all of this. And
So it's all my fault.
in general, yes, you could say that. It just happened that way. Starting from that post, well, who will try? So I decided to try, and I reached the point of no return where it was frustrating to stop. Therefore, this map was created over almost 1.5 years. Then in the spring of 2015, it was ready. And at that time, I had an offer to join the team as a developer of such content. Well, that's how I joined the team. I started in the summer of 2013. And my first piece of content, which was the Velikiye Luki Map, I made in the spring of 2015. It took almost a year and a half to study the technology, to develop, connect, and understand how it was all created and drawn. It was much easier for me because the Velikiye Luki Map was also winter, and almost nothing of my own was created. That is, everything was taken as ready-made objects, ready-made textures. It was just necessary to take historical sources and based on them assemble all this, a height map, a forest map, a city map, and so on. Guys from the community also joined in creating unique three-dimensional content for this map, and because they did their part, it was awkward for me to stop this work. Well, it needed to be completed somehow, and that's how from the community side, this was the first map made for Battle of Stalingrad and for
Great battles.
and so it got into the project completely free. That is for the community.
Yes, there was a unique structure, the Veliki Ustyu Kremlin.
There was a fortress, the Velikiye Luki fortress. There was the House of Soviets. There was the huge Velikiye Luki locomotive plant, locomotive repair plant, unique stations, and overpass. Well, the guys, the 3D modelers, they developed objects based on photographs they found and so on. And these guys, yes, many of them, Vasily from Mariupol, Vlad from St. Petersburg, they still collaborate with us, and now they are working on Odessa and were involved in developing unique objects for these maps and for Leningrad as well.
So actually, this is an excellent opportunity to explain how we went from Velikiye Luki to having a map of Odessa, and later we'll talk about Leningrad.
Well, interestingly, these maps emerged almost simultaneously the desire to create them too. In the summer of 2016, the idea to create a map of Odessa emerged because, well, I was born in Tiraspol and I always wanted to fly over my city, right? I mean, in Odessa, we always went to the sea as children. I later lived in Odessa as an adult, and we passed through it 100 times in Tiraspol, in Chisinau, and in Balti. So, in all these places that are reflected on this map, they um, that's how the idea for this project was born. So I always wanted to fly as if in that time, right, on those planes, especially since I always loved aviation, like Rechkalov's books, The Sky of Moldova, The Sky of Odessa, 1941 by Chervotenko. I read all of that and thought, why not? It needed to be tried. Well, I already had experience with Velikiye Luki, and the guys also got excited about the idea. So why not? Let's try it. Well, at that time, there were two people that is, directly, well, among those who wanted to make the map. It was me and my friend Nikolai. Hans bet on the forum, well, in the virtual sky, he is Hans. We gathered some initial materials, found a height map and a map, collected all the historical references, did some initial work, put it all together, and realized it probably took us about a year, maybe 6 months. and realized that, well, it's probably worth pausing because at that moment the Kuban map was being officially created.
Mm-hmm.
And just then seawater technology began to be integrated. And we wanted to make Odessa, first of all, with the sea, well, with real seawater. And at that moment, the work on Odessa stopped. We needed to finish Kuban and we needed to finish, well, to learn all these new technologies to understand what Odessa is all about. Well, the map isn't just of Odessa, right? I mean, the map is full of cities and villages with their own architecture, textures, and so on. How and who was going to do this at that time? We had no options. And so the work was packed up and put on the back burner until better times, when there would be sufficient time and understanding to put it all together and see what could come of it.
And the shelving for the long term, when did it happen? In what year?
In the summer of 2016, we probably started in the winter of 2017 work.
No, about a year and a half later, right?
No, about 6 months, 8 months after we gathered all the main parts, we realized there was no time to make something beautiful and big out of it at all. I periodically opened this project. Well, I had it on my hard drive, I opened it, and the city layout itself. Yes, we uploaded the aerial photography, and I slowly assembled the city model. The guys who are 3D modelers, like Vasily and Vlad, occasionally sent me some new houses and unique buildings, and I wanted to see how they would look in the editor and so on. So gradually the city expanded, but it just expanded like a city model, while the map itself was bare bones, no?
And actually only the city itself.
Yes, moreover.
And the map is huge.
The map is 300 by 300 kilometers. A decision was made a while ago because we wanted to implement exactly what we are planning for it. We wanted to play out the initial phase of the war from the river Prut from Romania at the border between Romania and the Soviet Union at the time to the battle for the Dniester and accordingly to the defense of Odessa. So this will be our focus. We will return to this question. Yes, what else?
At what point then did the pause in work occur, and was it quite long? And at what point and why did work suddenly resume on it?
It was practically the autumn of 2023 already. I had a not so successful vacation at that moment. Somehow it didn't work out for us to go anywhere or do anything else, so there was practically nothing to do. And I returned to my model, to this map, unpacked it completely, and suddenly realized that there are technologies, knowledge, capabilities, and even certain external programs that could significantly speed up this work. That is, a map of this size is created alone, in my estimation, in about 3 years. And if 2 or 3 people work on it, it can be done in about 1.5 years of full-time work. This does not consider that during these years of pause, a lot of knowledge was accumulated and many new tools were developed, which significantly accelerated the ability to assemble this main scene. All the villages, all the roads, all the bridges, that is to assemble a model exactly 300 by 300 kilometers, populated entirely with human settlements. That is, so that there are not one city or 2 cities, but now around 700 settlements, or even more on the map. That's it. And somehow we just came to the understanding that, yes, in general, it is possible to resume. And there is already an opportunity to do so within a reasonable time frame. Somehow, after I collected Odessa during my vacation, presented it, textured it, and showed it in the office, I was given the green light. Why not? It was now full speed ahead. Well, it so happened that this map has reached the stage in which it is now available in early access to players.
Yes, and the feedback has been very positive actually. And it's positive because the map doesn't just repeat what was already there. Of course, it uses experience and developments, but even with all that, it has some unique features that, well, it might be worth listing.
Well, first of all, the construction of all major cities, absolutely all major cities. There are quite a few on the map. This includes Odessa, Voznesensk, Ribnitsa, Kotovsk, Tiraspol, Chisinau, Balti, Romanian cities such as Galati and Ismail, a Ukrainian city, and so on. In other words, they are all made using a quite detailed modeling method, something we couldn't do before, mainly due to time constraints. So we always tried to place cities on maps where they should be, of such size, of such shape. With that, and we have always tried to restore the main landmarks of certain major cities exactly where they stood as they were at that time, and so on. But specifically on the map of Odessa and now Leningrad, well,
the approach to building such a city started with modeling that was much more detailed. That is, not only was the shape of the city replicated, but also its main streets, all prominent landmarks, cemeteries, parks, churches, art school, coastline, suburbs, huge stations, huge sorting hubs. Everything was restored using aerial photography, right? And to be sure, all of this is not 100% accurate, but it's much more accurate, and therefore the city in the game looks, well, almost like a real layout.
And besides Odessa itself, what else would you highlight?
Besides Odessa itself, well, what's there? It's a huge,
Budapest.
yes, a massive build-up. More than 700 settlements clearly tied to logistics. That is everywhere. There should be all the villages, all the settlements, all the airfields. Railroads connect everything, laid out according to the same maps. Now, these roads are functional like railways. That is not just some main points that are clearly needed for the game. That is, we tried to reconstruct everything as detailed as possible. Since there was really a lot of time planned for development, we started with we want 400 in total. In fact, it turned out to be 700, and that's still not enough. We still want more, more, more. Now I am getting messages from guys who are building the career mode, well, campaigns. Right here, there is one Moldovan village that is missing. It is important. Well, it's also important for the war. So we will also be a little. What else is not already on the map? There will also be such a question. For example, what else are we planning for the map? First of all, the completion of a certain number of settlements, which historical consultants will tell us were important on the front line. We really want to replicate it. We found the Romanian map that clearly marked the positions of pillboxes and bunkers. There were two very large fortified areas on the right bank of the Dniester. These are the Tiraspol fortified area and the Ribnica fortified area. The Germans could not easily take the Dniester because there was no single road bridge across it at the time. Yes, there were two railway bridges. These two bridges are shown on the map. The one near Ribnica, the second near Tiraspol, between Benderi and Tiraspol, and they were blown up during the retreat. And the Germans could do nothing about it. And Soviet aviation really interfered with them a lot. We also really want to reflect this in the second chapter of the campaign, Battle for the Dniester, in career mode. Indeed, there was a concentration of troops on the left bank of the Dniester every morning and night before the attempt to cross. And first of all, the fortified areas worked well, even though they were mainly machine gun bunkers. Aviation, those same I-153 Chaikas, worked very hard to hit the Dniester area. This is something I would also like to depict in the future, well, by the release.
Well, I think we will definitely succeed. And after the release, there will also be additions, just like with all the maps we have made before. Many changes have been made even after the release. Usually within a year after the release, we make some additions.
Well, there is always something to improve. Always something.
We'll talk more about this at the end, but for now, let's move on to the second part of the massive work on maps being carried out as part of the Siege and Liberation project. A map of the Gulf of Finland. Tell me, its history is similar but very different. How did it start? When did it begin? And what was its main idea, so to speak, of the people who started it?
It began roughly the same way as the map of Odessa. That is, people living in Finland, guys. Yes, virtual pilots. They also wanted to fly over familiar places. Moreover, in a historical context, in the context of flying, playing out the First War in 1939 between the Soviet Union and Finland, the Finnish Winter War. They started with the desire to fly in those places. They reached out to me, yes, meaning I also had video calls with them, and I explained the basics of map making. It turns out the guys, I think in 16, oh my god, in 2016, that's when the idea was born. In 2017, at the end of 2017, they began some initial work, again, not related to work in the editor, but work in Photoshop, in Illustrator. That is gathering all this material, historical maps, searching for like-minded people who would engage in 3D modeling, as they had a completely different village architecture. Not villages at all, but an almost endless scattering of individual houses. Well, that's just how it is. Well,
farmsteads.
Not even villages, no? But more like homesteads. These are a lot of isolated structures with several wooden houses scattered where there is no forest. And of course, the major cities also had aerial photography. They did extensive preparatory work and found substantial data. It seems they even went to some archives and someone helped them from a historical perspective, but they carried out extensive preparatory work.
And it turns out like that. Yes, just a second.
And this group of Finnish guys actually has its own name.
Karttakompania.
Yes, Karttakompania.
Right. Well, they started the initial work in 2016 and 2017. No, in 2018 to 2019, they began to achieve something and started to gather more guys who were doing all this, developing in 3D. But they planned such a vast the size of the map. Well, I think we didn't even have one this size with Bodenplatte. I mean, it's more than 400 by 400.
Yes, it's enormous.
So they wanted the entire Lake Ladoga too. Moreover, they did all this. They gathered everything together and have that territory. In other words,
Mate in the sense of the nature part.
that is, they gathered the water, they collected the elevation map, and they gathered the forests. They tried to process all this from a historical perspective and how it was at that time according to historical maps and assembled it, then began populating it using the models they created and our usual editor. Somewhere in 2022 is when they looked at the volume of work already done. They realized that the Soviet Union either needed another 8 years to develop all of this, or here we leave it as it is and only fly over Finland. And then they contacted us, right, and suggested in the year 2023, why don't we release it as it is? To which I believe we already responded with the suggestion, let's try to complete the Soviet Union part and its history on our own.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Well, and then already.
Well, this because there was obviously an opportunity to create not just a free map for flying around, but also to make a full-fledged project with a career. But then there was some understanding of which airplanes could be implemented there, and into this stream, the idea of making several airplanes from the late period of the war fit perfectly, which before that we didn't have a theater of war to make them until late in the war. That is the year 1944. Also specifically, the actions near Odessa and Leningrad during their liberation in 1944 allowed us to implement airplanes like the Yak-3 La-7, Junkers Ju-87D5, and the Il-2 model from 1944 with a gunner. Thus, there is an expression, the stars aligned.
And that's why we then proposed, let's try to discuss the rights. However, I admit that I don't know all the exact legal options behind all that.
It wasn't about rights. The point is, we took on the task of implementing the southern part of the map, namely the south coast of the Gulf of Finland, which was part of the Soviet Union, including Leningrad.
But this was also a challenge for us because taking an external development project, even though it was built using our technologies, and continuing it is not the easiest task. Because first of all, you need to understand what has been done there, how it has been done, and whether it all works at all. And start building further using completely different architectural solutions, different texture solutions, and to combine it all into a single map so it doesn't look like two different products. So you fly from the south, and this is the USSR. See, that's correct. It's different, but the map still needs to look like a single product, so that it's at least from one region, right? So from one area and so on.
Of course, but we already had such an experience. That was the work on the Normandy map, where in fact we completed England.
In France, yes.
The French side in different styles. There are different buildings, different structures, different textures there.
That's right, but we prepared the Normandy map entirely on our own, from start to finish. So everything could be planned from the beginning, how it would be. We understood what we wanted to achieve in the end, but here we only took half of the map from the guys and thought about how to make our part cohesive and unified.
Well, that's kind of why we
Well, such a
Was specialist. Moreover, the guys from Carta Compania actively participated in this process, helped us, and explained how things were done on their end.
In my opinion, they made more than 150 models of various houses, specifically for the Finnish side.
Yeah, so
And now they
built Viborg themselves.
Viborg fortresses for Viborg, and even now they continue this entire huge pack of 3D models for this map. They keep refining them, creating damage models for many of these structures. They are refining the textures. Well, in general, they still have a lot of work on these three-dimensional objects, specifically for the Finnish part.
Yes, well, actually, by the end of the year, we will have the first result that will go into the release version. There will be further refinements, which we will discuss a bit later after the release. But speaking of what will be included in the release at the end of this year, what unique aspects of this map would you highlight?
First of all, there's not there, but there is Leningrad itself. That is such a large city built with our technology. Well, there is Paris now, right? Actually, it's about 13 by 12 kilometers, but it was still made exactly as I said. It has landmarks, like in Paris, with the Eiffel Tower and Notre Dame de Paris, and so on. And the city is assembled, modeled just in shape and size, approximately as it should be.
Well, the most important avenues are still there.
Well, maybe yes, Paris is being remodeled and improved right now. New unique structures by the guys are being added there. As far as I remember, they want to add the Arc de Triomphe too. Nevertheless, Paris was modeled simply. For Leningrad, we decided to apply and to those cities that will also be on the Leningrad map from the Soviet side. This includes Krasnogvardeysk, Pushkin, and Narva. For these cities, I am trying to apply a much clearer schematic layout, a model layout to these areas. That is, the form is repeated, all the main streets, all the main landmarks in terms of parks, industrial zones, stations, railway junctions, interchanges, and so on, and Leningrad itself. It has millions of streets, a vast number of avenues, and a considerable number of canals. We are trying to replicate all of this. In the latest screenshots in our diaries, you can see the current result. It's like the northern part of Leningrad, from the center, yes, from the Admiralty, and to the north towards Vasilievsky Island and all the islands. All of them are already built up, and I think the result is quite decent. They even posted a screenshot comparison with real footage on the forum, so, well, it's turning out pretty well, I think. And the Leningrad is indeed really big. It's more than 14 kilometers in all directions. And if you count the suburbs, it stretches almost 25 to 30 kilometers. Odessa is 25 kilometers long, but with suburbs. But it is narrow, up to 9 or 10 kilometers wide. And Leningrad is a huge circle. It has 5 train stations and many things that from above show you this is Leningrad, meaning you will immediately see and recognize it.
But listen, it's not just Leningrad. This map is unique. I mean, there are other aspects, even other parts of the map. Tell us about them too.
First of all, the map is of the entire Gulf of Finland, almost reaching Estonia. Tallinn didn't fit in, so
that's why we call it the Gulf of Finland.
The division has an airfield. I don't remember its exact name, I forgot, from which a raid on Berlin was carried out in 1941 by Soviet Il-4s. So, yes, all the guys are asking, well, the pilots are asking for the Il-4 as always, but the Il-4 is not my field. So, what's there? First, there's Lake Ladoga. We will also try to set up all the logistics that were temporarily put in place. The road of life can be seen from above. Then there is the famous Signavino, where there was a bottleneck, the Signavino Heights, which...
Did the Signavino Heights fall into the development zone that we are releasing in the new year?
Yes, there will be this bottleneck several kilometers long, which they tried to overcome for all 3 years of the siege. They tried to break through, but the Germans held their ground. Actually, I didn't know that, but it's an absolutely swampy area with a bunch of worker settlements. There are 7 or 8 of them. With the railway lines, we recreated all this. That is the entire railway network on the Signavino Heights. Signavino itself. So this can be played out in careers, missions, and so on.
And what about the nature of the marshy lands?
Yes, that's right. The guys from Finland did a great job. They made a complete texture pack, although only for summer. Our task will be to create seasons for this map as well. That is, the swamps are highlighted with separate textures. Visually, they are very well visible. The road network, accordingly, is also entirely and very detailed. Well, detailed from both the Finnish and the Soviet sides. And literally today it became clear that regarding the development, I think this will be the most built up map we have ever made, because on the Finnish side, apart from this infinite number of single houses in Finland, which are everywhere, so there are more or less populated areas where there is at least a church or something like that. There are about 200 of them on the Finnish side, including several large cities. Viborg, Narva is...
For which, by the way, unique objects have also been made.
Right. And on the Soviet side, we have also already made a preliminary count of the completed ones. There are more than 600 settlements, just small ones without Leningrad. So it turns out that the whole map will have around 900 populated places, one way or another, built using historical maps and restored in the real places with approximately the same shapes, sizes, and so on. A considerable number of railway branches and roads. We will try to replicate as much of this as possible, but many unique buildings are not ready yet at this time, but we hope they will be added to our map eventually.
Actually, this map, which will be released at near the New Year, will be record-breaking for the number of recreated models of unique historical buildings.
Well, considering that some structures are built as entire ensembles, for example, the Peter and Paul Fortress on Hare Island, or the Spit of Vasilievsky Island, with the exchange as a whole object.
But it's not only St. Petersburg; it's also on the Finnish side.
On the Finnish side, the cities are also very well restored. And they have this peculiarity. They have developed a very good woodworking industry. They have a vast number of ports. We didn't have such facilities before, including wood piles and wood rafts. They made wooden rafts that, although they do not move, look absolutely interesting from the air.
Quite authentic, yes.
Yes, when entire bays are covered with these timber rafts.
Let's wrap up by briefly mentioning in about a minute and a half what we plan to continue improving after the release of Odessa and Leningrad, which will come out this winter or early next year.
Well, first of all, we plan to complete the gameplay entirely. That means full-fledged careers. In the same Odessa of 1941 shell, for example, it will not only be the defense of Odessa, as I said, but also the border battles of 1941, the defense of the Dniester River, and accordingly the defense of Odessa itself, the battle for the Dniester and the defense of Odessa. In 1944, starting from the eastern part of the map, we will move west throughout the whole of 1944. That means the Chișinău-Iași operation will be partially reenacted. What was it called?
I think so. And Leningrad?
Leningrad portion, again, first of all, our specialists are still conducting studies on the historical aspect of what exactly we can show both in 1941 and in 1944. But in 1941, it is already clear that from approximately September. So here as well, there will be a full-fledged career covering all the main events of 1941. This includes the siege of Leningrad and accordingly aviation operations over the besieged Leningrad. And in 1944, the summer of 1944, it will be the complete breakthrough of the blockade and accordingly the movement of the front towards Finland and towards Estonia.
Right. So we need to understand why we are releasing the project this way. To conclude, shall we? I mean, why don't we add another year to the development, or about 8 months, and release it in the summer of 2026? Well, firstly, we want to deliver what is ready to everyone who pre-ordered this project as soon as possible. First of all, that's one thing. Secondly, we want to give all of this to Steam customers as well, since there is no early access on Steam. So the release will include one phase of the career on each map, and all the planes will be fully ready. So apart from the seasons, will the maps themselves be completely ready too?
I think so.
So yes, no, and accordingly, by the summer of 2026, we will fully complete development, no, including all phases from 41 to 44 for careers, all seasons, and some improvements to the maps.
Additional texturing work with textures will be done because on the same map of Odessa, Moldova is not yet covered with fields, but it should be. The Moldavian SSR was, after all, a Soviet Union granary too. We won't be able to make vineyards. We don't have the technology to do so. Nevertheless, agricultural land should be there, and it is planned. Also, from the gaming perspective, these are the fortified areas of Ribnica and Tiraspol. This is quite important from the standpoint of military operations and engineering structures, and we would like to depict them.
Well, Yura, thank you very much for chatting with us. You found time for a call with us, so I hope we can discuss some topics related to map development or careers later, perhaps in 2026. Thank you all, friends, for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel now. Additionally, we are also on X, Facebook, Discord, and Reddit. Most of our communication takes place on Reddit right now. Feel free to join our group there, where you can also ask questions. I will be happy to answer those questions for you. Well, that's all for today. Thank you all very much. Stay in touch. Bye. Yura, bye.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.